Okay, so welcome to microservices communication tutorial, and in this tutorial we'll discuss about how two API server can communicate using message broker. Okay, so what we will do is that we'll create two API server using .NET Core, and we'll try to communicate those API server using RabbitMQ. And RabbitMQ is message broker. Okay, so basically what here we'll create two API server, one console app as an intermediate, and we'll use mongodb for the second API server to store database as a create, read, update, delete REST API. Okay, so let's begin with the agenda for this tutorial. Okay, so I'll explain first architecture diagram for this tutorial, and then I'll explain how we can set up RabbitMQ and how we can log into RabbitMQ, and I'll set up the RabbitMQ specifically using Docker. So I'm expecting that you already have installed Docker desktop in your computer and Docker installed already. Then I'll create the setup for MongoDB using Azure Cloud. So MongoDB is freely available with the limitation of throughput or input output, and you can easily subscribe for MongoDB Atlas as a free tier application, and you can choose whichever server you want to use. So I'm going to use Azure Cloud, and there are multiple options with the data center region and also provider as a Azure or AWS or GCP or Google Cloud platform. So you can choose whichever you want. I just use Azure Cloud. Then I'll create producer API server that will be .NET Core API, and I implement that code. Then we'll create consumer application using C# based console app, and then after at last we'll create consumer server which will be .NET Core API as well. So let's start with the architecture diagram, so I can explain overall architecture and how that's going to communicate. Okay, so let's assume that we have a scenario in your daily life or in your job that you have to communicate to API server, and you do not have different ways how you can communicate. So let's assume that you have this two API server installed on different location. One is in different region, and one is in different region, and those are kind of RESTful API server where you have to make a call using HTTP. So let's say you have two servers. So I just created a kind of scenario here, a two API server. Sometimes it's possible that your API server is running on Kubernetes or any sort of load balancer, and that all of the microservices pattern using like kind of API gateway. So let's say we have this two API server, and let's say that we have different subscriber or different consumer of RESTful API, where you have web browser application or Android application or IoT device which is sending data continuously or posting data to this API server. So let's explain. Let's imagine that you this IoT device broadcasting temperature or weather broadcast to this API server. So this is kind of just simple scenario where you'll have kind of GUI or Android application or any sort of application which is posting data to API server. Now here in this API server, what we have to do is that we have to create RabbitMQ publisher function, then RabbitMQ cluster, then RabbitMQ message broker, and API server and database. Okay, so let me explain whole scenario. So what it will do, this will create one API server which will accept post method as a RESTful. So we'll accept that post method, and will send one message using RabbitMQ publisher, RabbitMQ send message, and the will have RabbitMQ cluster or server already running somewhere everything will be in our localhost for this tutorial, but let's assume that it's running on localhost on some port. So we'll publish that message, RabbitMQ will store that message, and we'll have one consumer app that will be a kind of console application. You can create your console application or any sort of application which can consume RabbitMQ. So I use C#. You can create Java, Python, or any language you want. So subscribe for that message. So we have to subscribe for that message or channel, and once after we subscribe, we have to call REST API of another server. So in our scenario, we have two servers which are located on different servers with different domain. So we have to find a way where how we can communicate. Another way is that we can create subscriber here, and this API server directly call to this one, but this is not kind of ideal method I'm considering to use, because this server has to continuously waiting or listening. So we have to continuously wait for someone to wait for RabbitMQ to send the message. So it's kind of active listening here, and REST API server is not meant to create that kind of listening port or just to receive the message. So what we can do, we can create intermediate here. So this is console app application. So whenever the message pass from RabbitMQ, it will send to RabbitMQ. RabbitMQ will send to here as a consumer. Consumer will process this message and send data to this API server. So let me explain how I created this. What's the actual logic of this application is that here using REST API will collect broadcasted weather data, will send that data to RabbitMQ. RabbitMQ will send that data to consumer application, and that consumer application will call another REST API, and this REST API will have that REST controller and having that CRUD method, create, read, update, delete with the database. So then that data will be stored to MongoDB. So from here to here we are storing data directly from MongoDB. So in real world scenario, there are multiple scenarios in online shopping application where we have to send data from one server to another server, or one microservices or API microservices to another microservices. In those scenarios, generally we are using we are creating microservices inside one Docker or inside one Kubernetes cluster, and they are just communicating directly without making network calls. In this scenario, we are creating two network calls. So this one is actually making external network call to some other website or other API server. So all of the server have a different IP. In microservices scenario, all of the projects or all of the API server or gateway that are communicating with each other and passing message directly, kind of internal communication in same network. But this is different scenario, and this is kind of like we'll see this scenario everywhere, because sometimes what it happens that we'll have only access of this API server, and this API server will have only documentation of how you can call method of any specific API server. On the same side, we'll have control of this API server, but we do not have control of this API server. So in this scenario, we can create publisher wherever we have control and publish the message and pass that message to different API server without asking developers to create here a subscriber. We can create one publisher here, use RabbitMQ and call that REST API to pass data. So it can be a multiple scenario in online shopping, that for example, if price is changing, we have to pass the price update to another server. So there are multiple scenarios. Like for example, if I can think of one right now, that is Shopify. So let's say you have your Shopify website, and Shopify RESTful API, and you have your catalog or your warehouse data, and if you are changing price, then you have to publish that message, or you have to send that price change data to your Shopify website. If you have your Amazon website and you have access to your Amazon marketplace account using API server or API access of the Amazon, then you have to send there by using making RESTful API. You cannot ask Amazon to create a consumer for you that accept for this data. So this kind of scenario where the third party company is just providing API access, and you have to make workaround, or you have to make those calls, that time we can use this kind of scenario. Or if everything is in your control, then it's better to make a call internally. You can still utilize this one. It will be fast, but we can still make direct communication or communication using same network without making external call, or making without making publicly accessible call to network. Okay, in this tutorial I haven't used any sort of authentication for API server. That's public kind of, with get and post. No authentication, no token I have used. This is just kind of simple application I have created. Okay, so this is kind of architecture diagram, and if I move to RabbitMQ setup, I'll use this command. Overall I'll explain once I start implementing that one. Producer API server using .NET Core API. So what I have created is that just a simple REST API to post data. So it will accept data using RESTful method, RESTful API, and we'll call one RabbitMQ producer send message function, which will send it actually to RabbitMQ as I explained here. Then we'll have consumer application, which will be console app. So this application will continuously running, waiting for command to stop, but continuously actively listening and actively connected to RabbitMQ, and it will wait for the subscriber. It will wait for whenever the new message come to RabbitMQ, and as soon as that message come to that channel or queue, it will subscribe it, and will create that receiver. And once the message come, it will process that message and pass to another API server. So in this scenario, we assume that we have different API server, and both API server have their own unique representation of their database schema or models or entities. So in that case, we have to process that message, convert that message in the format where this another API server is accepting the message. So those conversion will be taken. I will create on that code. Then we'll have consumer server .NET Core API code. So this is kind of third party. We can assume that as a third party server simply waiting for your REST API call, and it will update the database, like create new entry, update the entry, delete the entry, or read entry for you from the database. So I'll create that one, and in this scenario I created I'll use mongodb database server, and as I explained, it's freely available. We can just subscribe and use it, and we'll make connection to mongodb, and I'll create the CRUD operation, create, read, update, delete operation using mongodb and .NET Core. So this tutorial will also help you to kind of understand how MongoDB works with .NET Core, how you can set up MongoDB at LastDB. So that this part is very useful for the I can create the .NET Core API server connection using SQL Server or MySQL, but specifically to explain how it work with MongoDB, I just created a simple .NET Core database connection. So let's jump to direct implementation, and I'll create step-by-step implementation, and this code will be available to freely available to GitHub. You can download and you can jump to directly which topic whichever you want to learn. In this tutorial we'll see how we can install RabbitMQ using Docker. So first I'll do I already opened up my Docker desktop application. So if we see, there is nothing here, and okay, so let me pull the Docker image for RabbitMQ. So first let me explain like what it will do. Okay, so if we see this Docker run, so whenever we pull the RabbitMQ, it will run inside the Docker, and we are using RabbitMQ management one. So we can see we'll get the GUI where we can see the interaction in RabbitMQ. Okay, so it will expose the port 15672 with the default 15672. Okay, so and this is the Rabbit image name. So once I hit this one, it will pull the RabbitMQ management window, and if, as we can see in the right side, it's already pulled that one, and it's running. Okay, so let's wait for it. Now once this execution finished, what it will do is it will we can access RabbitMQ directly from localhost. So like, okay, so that's gonna be a localhost colon 15672, and if I hit ping, it will open up our RabbitMQ management, but it's executing, so we have to wait. Okay, now as we can see here, RabbitMQ is already started, and we can see that there is no connection made yet. There are no queues created yet. Okay, so this this way we can just pull the Docker and run the RabbitMQ management. Okay, so if I do log out, okay, so the guest will be username and password will be the same guest, and I'm logged in to my RabbitMQ. So we can deploy this RabbitMQ directly to any server or any Linux based or Windows based instance, and with the static IP, and wait for the someone to connect with the user guest and password. And even we can change the password for the guest user, or we can provide the admin user. Okay, so here is the administrator is guest, and we can change the password. Okay, but in this tutorial I'm not gonna cover it, how we can change the RabbitMQ password. Okay, so RabbitMQ is ready and set up for the use already, and now we'll create our producer API and send message to RabbitMQ first. so our RabbitMQ is up and running. Now what we'll do is we'll create our first code for producer, and what I'm gonna do is I'll create the new application for our producer. And okay, so what I'll do is I'll create the new project, and I'll choose API Web and Console ASP.NET Core API application. So I'll select that one. I'll use .NET 6. Now I'll okay, so API server producer. Okay, so perfect. Let's create the project. Okay, so that project is created. Now what we'll do is that first we'll test the API, and then we'll install all of the plugins required for this project, or a NuGet dependency for this project. Okay, so the while it's running, I'll explain like what kind of NuGet dependency we're gonna require. Is that first one is we'll use mass transit, RabbitMQ mass transit, and others are kind of Newton soft JSON for communication, for conversion the JSON during the communication. Yes. Okay, so that is up and running. Now let's test this one. Okay, I'm trying out execute, and it's displaying data. So once I ping this API, it's giving me a kind of ready-made response of about 5 different date and temperature. Okay, so what we'll do is first let's start with the installation of the plugins. So manage NuGet packages, or I'll do is I'll pick this one first. I need that one. Now let's add another one. Okay, so we need RabbitMQ as well, so I'm gonna use RabbitMQ and mass transit. Accept that. Okay, so that is installed. Now we have to kind of decorate our API server. So what I'll do is first I'll create the startup file. Okay, so our startup file created. Now what I'll do is I will add all of the configuration which I have collected directly from the internet, how we can use that. So I'm pasting that one. Okay, so let me explain this code. Okay, so here it's giving the error for mass transit, so we have to declare mass transit dot client. Actually I have to just use mass transit. so it will remove that error. Now if you can see here, it's configuration. I have to declare that configuration as well. So what I'm gonna do is create the configuration. Okay, configuration, we have to read only the configuration from the app settings. Okay, so that is done. Now it seems it's ready. Now what we have to do is we have to make we have to clean up this program.cs file. So what I'm going to do is copy and paste from the ready-made code. Okay, so I'm removing this everything. Okay, now let's, yeah, if we see this startup file is giving the error, so what I'll do is using the server producer, so that's error gone. So what it basically this code is doing is using the startup file, and all of the program.cs code is shifted to startup file now. So let's go to there now. As you see, as you saw there was the code server add controller, add point swagger, and this is the new code we added for kind of mass transit. Perfect. Now other configuration code. Now we can see here is the, I just shifted from the program.cs to here, redirection, authorization, routing, endpoint, swagger, and swagger UI. So this swagger and swagger UI will run our will open up that swagger window. Let me stop the last execution. Let's, okay, so we just added some code, so it's better to run it. Yeah, now it's giving error. Okay, so now I'm run it. Okay, so if we see this one, configuration is giving us error. So what I'm gonna do is we have to declare our constructor. Okay, so I'm using the configuration as it is, and perfect. Now what will initialize the configuration? That is done. Okay, so let's stop it and run it again. Perfect. Now if we see, that is open up. Now let's taste it as it is. Okay, so still it's giving 5. Now we are ready to change, make our new function using the controller what Microsoft has provided. Okay, so now if we visit here, here we can see we are just calling this get weather forecast. But now what we need to do is we have to create another post method. So what I'll do is I'll just copy and paste my code directly. Okay, so I'm just pasting my function here directly. Okay, so what it's doing is posting weather forecast, and it will take the weather forecast JSON or object when we call from the REST API. Now here if you see, it's giving the error. Okay, so here in my actual code, what I did is I created one RabbitMQ client. So I'll do is I'll create new class and add RabbitMQ. Perfect. Now if we go to the controller, that error is gone, and we have to create new constructor as well. So what it will do is perfect. I'll create the configuration first. Configuration and configuration. And we have to, okay, so that is accepting our configuration. So what I'll do is I'll create the configuration directly. And okay, so this is our RabbitMQ client, so we have to make the connection. Okay, so what I'll do is let me just copy and paste my other code. Okay, so I'll explain one by one what it's exactly doing, and I'm gonna create this function for making the connection. Then I'm pasting everything actually here. Okay, perfect. Now let's okay, so it's giving the error for the factory. So perfect. So factory is declared, connection is declared. Okay, so model, it's still giving the error for model. Okay, so model is declared. Now it's giving the error for connection. Okay, so I just pasted my whole code. Perfect. Now let me explain this code one by one, what it will do. Okay, so that is our RabbitMQ client class, and that will make the connection to RabbitMQ. And we have implemented send message functionality, and that will be published to the RabbitMQ. Okay, so what this declaration overall explaining is that the exchange name will be our topic exchange queue name. So I'm going to create two q1 and 2, and for overall it's all topic queue. So overall that it's going to be a 3 queue in RabbitMQ, and there will be a 3 routing key. Okay, and now once we make the connection, create connection, it will I'm using direct localhost guest username and password, as I explained like in the past tutorial. Like guest will be username and password, and I'm making the connection mode, and here I'm declaring the exchange as exchange name first. So the topic will be topic exchange. Now this 3 lines just declaring the queue name 1, queue name 2, and all queue. There are no specific use for this true, but I just created just for creating extra queues. And I'm binding the queue name 1, exchange name, routing key. Okay, so queue name 1 is bind to routing key 1, and exchange name is topic. queue name to binding to routing queue 2, and exchange name is topic, and I'm binding again all of the queue to routing keys. So if we see a routing keys, that is overall star, and routing all name queue is all topic queue. Now, and the close function is just for closing the connection. Now here it will accept the message with the class weather forecast, which we already have a weather forecast here created by default in API, and it will call this function publish message. Now if we see here is giving the error for serialize. So what I'm doing is I'm serializing the class. Okay, so what I have to do is I have to create that class separately. So what I'll do is I'll create new class, and object serialize.cs. Okay, so use my code directly. Perfect. Now that okay, so these are the error for our Newtonsoft. Perfect. Now the class is declared. If you see object serialize object okay, actually this class needs to be declared static, because we are not gonna create the instance. We'll directly call the method for serialize and deserialize. Okay, now if we go to our last modification of RabbitMQ, that error is gone. Okay, now let's go to the controller. Okay, so if we go to the controller, here this is giving the error of configuration still. So what I'll do is I'll create I'll declare the configuration, so we are not getting that error. Okay, so I declare that configuration directly. Okay, so error is gone. Okay, so do I need to okay, so everything is as it is, and we have to declare this configuration in our constructor. Perfect. Okay, so I configuration is perfect. Okay, so that this is ready. Seems no error. Now let's test this one. Okay, so if we see, there was only one weather forecast, and it was get method. Now it's added and mapped the post method as well. Now if we see, it's giving the example value, and what I'll do is I'll go in my code first, and here I'll do is add the debug point, and I'm going to send message, and I'm adding debug point here as well. Okay, so let's try it out. Perfect. Now if you see on the debug point, we are seeing the data summary string as a string text. Temperature is 0 and Fahrenheit on 32. Okay, now let's use F10 to go inside the send message. Now it's here in send message. It's trying to publish the message, and that seems done. Ooh. Okay, so what I have to do is I have to Okay, now let's go to the overview. Okay, now we can see here that we are already seeing the message here. Okay, so if you see the connection, one connection is made by API server producer, and K and queues are all topic queue, topic Q1 and topic Q2. Perfect. So that is successful. So API server has successfully made the connection. Now what we will do is we'll create the consumer or a consumer console application. But before that, what we have to do is we have to create another consumer server. So two separate server located on two different location, and for now here it's on a two different port. Okay. Okay, so welcome to microservices tutorial, and in this tutorial what we're gonna do is that I'll create the consumer RESTful API. Okay, so this is not actually the RESTful consumer, but that is we can consider it as a kind of server which is ideally sitting on one location and waiting for the API or RESTful call to come, and it will process it and make the database operation. So this is just kind of third party API server, and I'm trying to mimic that server. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll create the just a moment. Okay, so let's create the new project, API server kind of consumer. Okay, so I already explained like how. Okay, so in this API, first of all, in this API server, we are going to use MongoDB for our database connection, and I already explained how you can create your MongoDB on Atlas. Okay, so let's begin with the API server consumer. Okay, so first of all, what we'll do is similarly we have to change our startup and program.cs. Okay, so for this one actually I'm not gonna use anything in our startup file, so it's not required to create startup file. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just use the MongoDB. Okay, so for this first we have to install our MongoDB dependency. Okay. So okay, so which driver we actually require, that is core, that I'm selecting it, and we actually need Mongo driver for .NET, and what we'll do is we are okay, so that two we need, and I did the packages. Perfect. Okay, so that is installed. Now what we'll do is we'll include everything in our okay. So okay, now what I have to do is to add here our MongoDB, possibly MongoDB connection, or do I need to okay, yeah, we actually we don't need to add here anything. Okay, so let's, and this is even not required, I would say. Let's test this one. Okay, so this is as it is our weather forecast controller, but once we make connection to the okay, once we make a connection to MongoDB, we have to make some changes. Okay, so now here I'm just trying it out, executing. Yep, that's everything is up and running. I'm closing it actually, and okay, so I'm stopping my server. Now let's start making connection to MongoDB. So first what I'll do is I'll create one service actually. Okay, so first what we'll do is we'll create app settings here. Okay, and in our app settings, what we'll do is I'll make the connection string, and let me copy and paste what I already created directly. So about yep. Okay, let me explain this one then. Okay, yeah, our connection string is our direct cluster connection with my username and my password, and the database name is weatherdb and weather forecast collection name. Okay, so let me explain how it's overall in MongoDB first. Okay, so what I'll do is open to cloud.mongodb, and if we go to browse collection. Okay, perfect. Now if you see here, I already created one database, weatherdb, and another collection is weather forecast. So in here we'll insert all of the data, and we'll use MongoDB as a kind of database. Okay, so I use that one database and weather forecast collection, that is collection name. Now what we'll do is we have to create this setting actually, database settings. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll create weather database settings class. Settings. Okay, so that weatherdb settings class created, and what we'll do is we'll remove this constructor, we don't need it, and I declared all of the app settings file here. So connection string, database name, and weather forecast. Now what I'll do is I'll create the okay, so here if you see we already have a model, but we don't need this model. So what I'll do is I'll create new model. I'll explain why I don't need this model. Okay, so if we see this is already a similar model, like similar model with the our producer, where if you see in producer code, you'll see date and time, integer and string. What is the only difference in our weather model? What we'll do is we'll create this model which is it similar to which is similar for which is actually compatible for our MongoDB. So let me paste whole my model class directly here. Okay, now I'm declaring the MongoDB. Perfect. Now if we see MongoDB dot based on y included, serialization included, now this model is ready. And if I'm just keeping this one as it is for now to not get the error from the controller. And okay, so here is weather model. So if you notice that only difference is string. So what I'm trying to mimic is that, let's assume that you have only access to API server, which is we are creating that API server, and you don't know actual specification of the database, and you have only access to direct API. So what you can do is that you can just call that API server, and you can copy that response and create your own class in your consumer application. So we are not going on that detail, but I'm just displaying or explaining that only difference here is the string. So when producer is sending message, that will be in date and time, and here we are storing as a string, and everything is kind of here is we are using float, that is sending in integer. Here from the producer it's coming from as an integer, but we are using float. Okay, so that model is ready. Now what I'll do is I'll create the service for this one, and actually you can create the folder for the service separate and model for the separate to get the model controller and view kind of style. Okay, so I'm creating weather service, and that is done. And what I'll do is copy and paste the code. Okay, so I'll actually explain everything again. Perfect. Yeah, so this is our service which will be called from the controller for our CRUD operation. Okay, now that for error I have to declare dependency. Perfect. Now let me explain code overall. So what I will do, it's doing is whenever this weather service injected from the controller, it will initialize its constructor, and it's using the weather DB setting which I already created here, and those settings will be read here as a connection string. We are getting database name as a MongoDB, and we are using collection name, that is our weather model. So our collection name it will be parsed to weather model which I just created. Perfect. Now let me explain this all of the CRUD. So this is get async, so that is overall listing all of the files, or no, not files, all of the entries or rows from the weather model collection or from the Atlas. So that function here, it's a get async, and I'm passing ID, so it will fetch from the MongoDB Atlas by passing the ID. Another one is create, so that will create new entry, and this is the kind of method to just insert one async. and will pass the object. Okay, so this is gonna be our RESTful call, and that will use for this tutorial, and will call using weather model. And this is update. If you want to change the data, we have to pass updated value and ID, so it will find that ID and change the new updated value. And this is just for removing. So this is just one controller for all of the CRUD, create, read, update, delete to MongoDB Atlas. Perfect. So it seems this is ready. Now let's run it. No, that is not ready. We have to make changes to controllers. We have to call this one. Okay, so I'm stopping again. Now let's move to controller. Now we have this ready-made controller from the code. So what I'll do is I'll go to I'll create the controller first. Okay, so to use this controller, what we have to do is we have to inject our weather service first, which I just created. And yeah, that I already used it. Everything I'm keeping as it is, logger and everything. And what I'll do is I'll just inject weather service here, weather service, and I'll pass it from, okay, so weather service, and I'm actually using it weather service. Perfect. That should be underscore. Good. Perfect. Now what we will do, this method is no longer in use for us. So for that, for get for this tutorial, we are just using get and post. Get is overall get, which will fetch all of the data, and post is just creating one entry. And I'm not going to explain here for updating and deletion. You can add it. Okay, so let's create the get first. Okay, so I just pasted this code, and HTTP is it's HTTP get, and the function is get. Now I'm using another one, that is get by specific ID. I'm using the another one, that is our post, actual useful one, from where from here our consumer call. Perfect. Why this is giving error? Okay, so that is weather service. Perfect. Okay, so it's giving get here error. So let me do one thing. I'm removing this one, ready-made one. Here perfect. So no error, no declaration error, anything. Okay, so this get, what it's doing is when we call from the browser, overall get, it will fetch all of the collection values and display it. Here it's here we have to pass our 24 digit ID to get it, and once we pass the ID, it will fetch specific value. And here it's the post, we have to post, or we have to pass data to the browser or API call, and it will process it here and create the entry to our MongoDB at last. And this is the special line that it will give the response as action result, that whatever new value added. Perfect. Now it seems now it's ready, and let's okay. So one thing I need to explain here is the auto generation of the ID, but let's test it first, that whether it's running. Okay, so now before that it was only one forecast, now one get method. Now we map two more new methods, which is one is post and one is get. So let's test first this one. Okay, so what it's doing is it's passing the ID. I'm trying to add and execute. So I haven't added anything. Now if we see that weather service while attempting, so if we see that this service is giving error, so I have to declare this service in let me stop first in program.cs. Okay, so for that, builder dot actually I'm given everything. Okay, so what I did is I using the API perfect. Now let me explain. It was up to here. Now if we see this, I'm configuring the configuration file, that is weather db settings, and we are getting this action to build it. So whether it will from the app settings, it will get this section which has the name weather database. So that section will be fetched and all of the value will be initialized. Okay, so that is that one. Now if we see, I just declared singleton weather service. Okay, so now it seems it's ready. Okay, so Swagger is running. Perfect. Now post, try it out, execute. While it's executing, what I'm gonna do is, okay, so now here it's giving the system format exception, string is not valid, 24-digit hex string. So what I'm gonna do is, here I have to send unique key. Okay, so let's try with this one. It's still not giving. Okay, so why? Okay, so it's not saving the entry. system format exception is not valid 24 hex string. Let me see the model, what we can change. Seems everything is same. Okay, so there was no mistake here. We just have to, we don't need to pass actually ID because it's auto generated. ID you can pass ID null and this will generate the new object ID automatically. So let's see. Post. Now I'm trying it out. I'm removing this one. Date is REST API test from .NET Core to MongoDB. We are using date as a string, and this is our first call to MongoDB. Let's try it out, and the temperature is 23. Okay, so that is 201 successful, and ID is here. Now what I'll do is I'll go to Mongo Cloud. Perfect. That is here. REST API dash from .NET Core. This is our first call to MongoDB. That's ready. So we have successfully created a RESTful API server which is talking to or communicating to MongoDB. Now we have two servers created. One is producer and one is consumer, not directly consuming RabbitMQ messages, but the consumer, which is ideally sitting on as a API server and waiting for someone to call. So okay, so welcome to microservices tutorial, and today's tutorial we are gonna see we'll create the consumer application and I'm gonna use C# console app. Okay, so let's start creating the application. So first what I'll do is I'll create the consumer application of using the 6 and consumer create. So that is created. Okay, so what Okay, so what we have to do first here after this ready-made application, removing that one, so let's decorate our program.cs file first. Okay, so first of all what we have to do is we have to create a new class that is for our RabbitMQ consumer. So similarly which we created as a client. So this is our consumer, RabbitMQ consumer. Okay, perfect, that is created. And what I'm gonna do is I'll install. What I have to do is I have to install first similar new get dependency. So I'm using RabbitMQ client. Okay, and we have to use Newtonsoft JSON as well. Perfect. Now what I will do is we can start decorating our RabbitMQ. So RabbitMQ consumer, that is here, and inside that what we have to do is we have to make all of the connections same as we created. So I'll copy and paste those code directly, but before that we have to create that serialize class which we similarly created in producer. So what I'm gonna do is create the object serializer class first. So I'll create new class, object so object serialize, that's correct. And I'm copy and pasting everything. Okay, now that is added, and only thing we need here is our Newtonsoft JSON file and system.txt library. Okay, so it's similar class doing serializing and deserializing. Okay, so here we'll serialize it and we'll deserialize the object, and I'll explain how it's gonna work overall. Okay, so here now we can start adding our connection. Start creating RabbitMQ consumer. So what I'll do is I'll copy and paste everything here from my code. Okay, and I'll explain again. Process message, it's required extra bracket as well, and all of the okay. so uh, da- okay, so this is giving an error for message pattern. So what I'll do is I have to add that library. Okay, so what I'll do is project manage NuGet package, then I'll search for the no, I don't need actually that one. Let me try to remove. Actually, what I did mistakenly is public. I removed. Actually, I removed this one. Seems perfect. Okay. I was not. These are not gonna use. So I'm removing that. Okay, so our RabbitMQ consumer is ready. So okay, so now what we're gonna do is we'll create the okay. So here now we are in the double situation or confusing situation where what we are gonna do is we'll receive one object or one entity model from the our producer, which we have to convert it. So we need similar class or similar entity from the producer, and we have to send same to our consumer by changing some of the value. So that for that complication I have to declare those model first. Okay, so let's declare first weather forecast. Okay, so that's gonna be our as it is from the as it is model from our our producer. Okay, so this is the data we'll receive for this model from the producer. Now similarly I have to create the class for to send the data to our weather post model. Okay, so just for identification I just gave the different name. So weather post model, and this is weather forecast. So this one we will receive it. This one from this will transform the data. Okay, so what I'm doing I'm gonna do is copy and pasting directly here. So let's assume that we have access to the server, and from that server we are just getting the response. So what I did, I got the response, and from that response I just converted it to a model. So at least we can easily convert it using Newtonsoft JSON. Okay, so that seems ready. Okay, so let me at least try it. So it's not giving me any connection error. Yeah, that is giving the error. Okay, so Okay, so it's saying that our object deserialize class doesn't have static void method. So it's saying that it doesn't have any starting point. Okay, so it should be here. I just removed that one. So first what we'll to do is have to add. So here it is, the code. I'm using one of my library, sorry. So perfect. Okay, so we are using consumer console app namespace, and we are calling the consumer from here. And okay, so let me explain this one. So once we run the console application, it will be continuously running. It will make first connection to our RabbitMQ, and it will process the message. From here it will never come back until we press something or the read key. So if I go to that process message, and if you see that code that is giving error here, that's fine. From here process message, we are using while true, so it will continuously wait for the message to come, and it will not close the application. It will be continuously running and continuously connected to our RabbitMQ. Okay, so now let's go to let's resolve this error first. So what I'm doing is RabbitMQ consumer class. We have everything, but why it's giving error for subscription? Okay, so this is I'm just commenting this one. So this is for making call to another server. Okay, so here it's giving error for weather forecast. Okay. Okay, so I just changed the name. Sorry, that error is gone. Now why we are seeing error on subscription? RabbitMQ consumer. Okay. Hang on, I have to add mass transit. Let's try. So subscription is giving. Okay, it seems like RabbitMQ version is giving some issue. So what I'll do is 501. Keep as it is. You get packages. I'm gonna do is remove this one and that one and do is I'll install 501. See whether it's resolving the error. It seems it's resolved the error. Yeah. Now let's try to run it. Okay, so it seems like it's waiting for RabbitMQ message. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm keep running this one, minimizing, cancelling this one, minimizing, and I'll launch the new instance of our Visual Studio. Okay, so from the producer we'll send the message. Okay, now I'm running this one. Okay, so we are running API server producer and we'll send one message to RabbitMQ and our consumer console application will consume that message. Okay, so if I go to post, try it out, execute. Okay, now if we see this is ready to send this message, I'm removing this debug point because it's sending already. Okay, so here in our console app, I'm timing debug point here. Okay, so let's execute again. Here it's posting and sending the message. Disable all breakpoint. Why I'm not receiving message to other end? Okay, so yeah, that message is processed here. Now if you can see, and I'm executing. Perfect, so that message executed overall. Now let's try again to send that one. So actually to receive it here I have to add breakpoint here, not here. Okay, I'm executing. Okay, perfect. Now we are seeing our message. Okay, so perfect. Yeah, whatever we passed, temperature 32, that is processed. Okay, so what we did overall, we posted from our API server producer and with this message, and it's arrived to our consumer console app. Now what we will do is we'll create a now from here consumer console app will make one REST API call. Okay, so I'm enabling this code, and what I'll do is I'll create that class for REST API call. Okay, so I'll create one class for REST API call. Okay, so that is created. Now what I'll do is I'll explain this one as well. I'm just copy and pasting from my other code. Perfect. Now let's resolve this one. Consumer console app, and that is resolved. Perfect. Okay, so what this code basically will do, cleaning up. Okay, so from our consumer, if we see our consumer from here, okay, so from here to here it will continuously wait for the message. Once the message is arrived, what it will do, it will deserialize with the our weather forecast model, which is our actual model. So this is from producer we are receiving this object, and we are converting that object to weather forecast as a message. And what we are doing here is weather post model. So basically we don't know, our producer doesn't know about anything about the other server, so we have to transform that message. So what I did overall here is that I created new object of weather post model. I'm using summary as it is, because it from producer we are getting summary temperature as it is. And here if you can if you see, this is integer, and what we are using is similarly integer. We are passing their integer as well, and from the only change is date to string. Okay, so we are getting date time, and we are converting into short date string to send to our REST API. And from here initializing the REST API call, the class which I just created. And if we go to our post data method, this post data method is doing is taking the object of weather post model, and using the web client I'm making the call. So if you see, this call is content type as a JSON. I'm serializing that weather post model as object into a JSON, and I'm uploading the data, posting that method, and calling that REST API function of other server. Okay, so as I see, as you can see, this code is enabled in RabbitMQ controller. And if we see this REST API URL, so REST API URL, that is our localhost 711 API weather forecast. So that's gonna be our URL of the other server. As you already says, we are receiving the message. Now it's time to call our our API server, that is the another one. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll open the another instance and open up that API server consumer application and run it. So it will wait for post method. Okay, so if we see, this is our producer which is already open, consumer console app which is already open. Now I'll open this consumer application. Okay, so let's run this one. Okay, so let's bring everything together. So this is our one Swagger, that is our API server consumer. What I'll do is so this is our producer, and I'll close this one. We'll paste it here. Okay, so this is API server producer. Let's change the order. Let's open our Mongo. Okay, so that's gonna there, and okay, so now that server is waiting for it. Okay, so if we see API server consumer and port is 7191, and for producer 7186. So we just have to make sure that on our console app, so consumer console app, and the port is 7171, but our consumer is running on 7191, so we have to change that one. Okay, so I'm changing 7191, saving it and running this one. Okay, so that is running. Now let's see. Okay, so our consumer is ready, up and running, waiting for someone to call. A consumer console app waiting for RabbitMQ to send the message, and our producer that is also ready from sending message using REST API. Okay, so let's test that. Okay, so here in producer, what I'll do is I'll in consumer I'll remove all of the breakpoint. In here I'm removing all of the breakpoint, and here I'm removing all of the breakpoint. Okay, so all of the breakpoint is removed. It should be straightforward from here to here to here. Okay, so let's create one post message, something good, try it out. So I'm passing date as it is, temperature C, and I'm sending this message to mongodb from RabbitMQ using REST API call via console app. Okay, so let's execute. Perfect, so that it's sent. Now let's go to our cluster, browse for the collection. Ooh, that did not go through. Okay, so seems like that we have to now add debug point. Okay, so what I'll do is in consumer console app I'll use the message here and I'll confirm the port again. So 7191, 7191, that is okay. So for our consumer, that is 7191. So it's okay. So what I have to do is I added breakpoint. So I'll post that message again. It seems like it's not passing through the RabbitMQ. Okay, the remote server returned an error, not found. So it seems like our RabbitMQ is off, maybe. RabbitMQ is up and running. Let me remove this all queue. Not, it's better to not remove queue from the RabbitMQ, otherwise your application might break in production. Okay, so let's see. Execute. That is success. Let's see whether we got the message. Yeah, it's came here. Why it's not coming here? Okay, now perfect. Seems like message came through. Okay, so perfect. It is done now. Let's see in our whether we see or not. It's not adding it. Let's clean it up. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll pass another message again. What I'll do is I'll post it here. Debug point. So we have to check response string. So why we are not receiving message? And Okay, it's okay. It seems like it's okay. Let's execute again. And 7191 weather forecast. Okay, so let's see. Okay, here we are getting exception, and that is let me see here whether we are receiving the message or not. Control receive the message. Okay, system get response error, the remote server not found. Okay, so since like we our port is wrong, https localhost 7191 API weather forecast. Okay, let's confirm that. So from Swagger, here is API server consumer executing. Okay, so that is hitting here. Okay, and that save on our database. So the only issue is 7191. Okay, here we don't have /API. That's the only issue. So what I'll do is, in our consumer console app, in our consumer console app, I have to remove this one. Okay, so let's stop this, run it again. Remove this one. Okay, so it's came here. Will retest it. Okay, full whole flow. Don't worry. Okay, so let's go to. Okay, so that message should be here. Okay, perfect. Now let's go to the actual call, and what we'll do is I'm changing this one and sending the message to Mongo. I'm executing. Perfect. So I sent that message, subscriber subscribe it, we got the acknowledgement, and Okay, so let's hear. Okay, so that is let's see first. Okay, so sending the message to MongoDB. Now here in our actual consumer server, let's see whether we got everything or not. So here what I'll do is I'll try it out this one, and perfect. So this server is also get the updated latest message. So from port producer we send message to RabbitMQ. From RabbitMQ we directly call API server consumer, and that API server consumer, we call actually this API, and it's stored in directly to MongoDB. So finally microservice communication from producer to RabbitMQ to consumer done. And you can find this code directly to my GitHub, and you can download it and run this code in sequentially, and you can test directly the way I explain here, and make sure that all of the setup you already create in advance. So you can use this code or test it out this code and learn about microservices communication. And thank you.